My view of community engagement is that it should be part and parcel of making the work. So audiences, communities, I think, need to be involved in a show, the conceptualisation of a show, like before it even starts, before it's even made. And look, that's an ideal, of course, and you know, when you're sort of living and working in a community, it's much easier to do that, of course, than if you're touring it around the place. So, but just take this for what it is, I suppose, just an example of a way that Creative Regions did that a little while back. So the project was called Tales of the Underground. It was developed over 2 years through the Regional Stages project. So this is funded through 3 levels of government, so the Australia Council, Arts Queensland and local government through Bundaberg Regional Council. We wanted to, because we're bordering on the Central Queensland region, we wanted to understand the social impacts of mining. And I guess we've got 3 communities that are ex-gold mining boom towns in and around our region. And we thought it would be interesting to look at these communities many decades on after the boom and to understand what the impacts have been, you know, the longitudinal impacts, what they've been. So we designed a project, a work that was going to be made with those communities and in those communities, and then tour in a small 6-pack tour around Central Queensland. A community, again, a community of interest, people who kind of come across this issue of mining all the time. So we developed 3 residencies. There's 3 playwrights went into these 3 communities, which were Krakow, Mount Perry and Mount Morgan in the Central Queensland area. Again, all ex-gold mining communities and have, you know, once upon a time all been really important in the economy of Queensland, keeping Queensland afloat, you know, in really hard times through gold. We talked with government agencies, especially local government, and, you know, in detail with local government. We spoke to community organisations, to arts organisations, to heritage organisations, community development people. We spoke to mining companies. We wanted to test the idea. We wanted to see, is this instinct of ours around this issue, is it something that's on the lips of everybody? And it was. People were saying that this is a really important thing. So everybody agreed, and lots of those people pointed to potential funding. So, you know, this enabled us to kind of think that, well, this is possible. So again, we found funding for these 3 playwrights to go into 3 communities, 3 weeks each in the communities to make a 30-minute work each. So that would create 90 minutes worth of theatre that would be shown in 1 night of theatre as a tour back. So back to those 3 towns, and then, as I said, to the broader Central Queensland region. So what happened in those residencies? I mean, where playwrights worked really closely with communities, where playwrights turned up at the pub and went for, you know, beers and rums and cuppers and scones and things with people, and talked to people about their stories and how their family histories had connected with mining and, you know, existing mining workers and what have you. Those are the communities where you could see in droves, when we toured this show, you could see those were the communities where people came out of the woodwork, where we had packed houses, where we had standing ovations. The work spoke to people. You know, there was one place probably where the engagement hadn't happened as much, and it was really palpable in the audience. And then in the 3 communities that we hadn't had a residency in, you know, there was a bit of, you know, there was connection with it, but the audiences certainly weren't as big or as responsive in those places. So it just went to show that having that personal relationship between artist and community was absolutely essential in getting in the response to it as well. So look, why did people respond to it? Why did people come to Tales of the Underground? I guess there's lots of reasons, but I reckon what we heard was they'd never met theatre makers directly before. They were intrigued by the process, intrigued by the idea. You know, what's this? Who's this playwright in the pub, and what are they doing? And you know, that sort of started a bit of conversation, particularly in very small towns. It's certainly a topic that had shaped those communities, the community's histories. Almost everybody who'd lived in that community has had some connection with mining over its history. So, you know, it was important to them because of the context and the content. As I said, they'd had a cuppa with the playwright or a beer or a rum, and so they had a direct relationship. I reckon that some people came along because they wanted to see if their story had made it on stage. But ultimately they saw themselves metaphorically and their histories reflected up there on stage. And, you know, certainly in one of these communities, an older gentleman came up and said, we've never had a professional theatre show in this community before and in this hall before. So, you know, that sort of stuff is pretty important, I reckon. So we gave community organisations the option as well to raise funds through a buy-in process, which I won't talk about, but, you know, that was taken up by some communities, and where it was, it meant that the night out became a big night out. It became a social occasion for the whole community. So this is a project that's funded by 4 local government areas. It was funded by the state government, not only through Arts Queensland, but also through then State Development. There was a whole range of funding that came from all over the shop because this was relevant. And look, I suppose one thing that frustrates me in all this is that we often hear the mantra that there's no market for new work in regional areas, and from our experience that's absolute rubbish. There's no market for work that doesn't mean anything to people, absolutely. But if it's relevant, if you build a direct relationship with the community, if you understand what they want and you deliver, if artists and producers give as much as they get in the communities, if you understand that sense of the cultural transaction, then absolutely you'll have a full house and you'll be asked back.